Hi, beautiful people. Welcome back to the Outcloseted Africa podcast, where queer Africans speak out. We are going to have a very special episode called Meet Your Host. If you are here right now, that means you're ready to dive into the beautiful, messy, and totally vibrant world we continuously explore. But before we get into the usual good stuff, I thought it was time we officially meet. I am your host, Willworth. While most of the time I ask the questions, today I thought the spotlight should flip and you get to ask the questions. But because I don't have an interviewer here today, I think I will try to answer some of the questions that I think you would want to know about me. And then in the comment section, feel free to ask any questions you feel I may not have answered. Let's be real. When you commit to listening to someone ramble into your ears every time, you want to know who they are, right? So, grab a sparkling water, a glass of wine, even better, a glass of whiskey. Because in this episode, we are pulling the curtain back and getting a little bit personal. Get ready to truly meet your host, Willworth. So, our first question is, what inspired me to start the podcast and why now? Well, I wanted to just create a space where queer Africans more broadly could tell their own stories in their own voices. And the intention was basically to change the narratives, but shape them to a queer voice perspective. It's not that there are no other queer people running podcasts that are speaking for and by queer people. But the difference between mine and theirs is that on this particular podcast, there is no correct or wrong answer. It's just different queer Africans talking about their life experiences and sharing their truth the best way they know how. Most of the time, our narratives have been shaped by outsiders, and so I feel that it's time for us to reclaim it. And this is the basic reason why I started the podcast. Who am I outside the podcast? Well, beyond this mic, I am deeply involved in community organizing and advocacy. My daily work revolves around supporting queer folks, especially LGBTQI women communities in Uganda, with access to health, safety, platforms for visibility. But as an individual, I'm also an educationist. I love to write. I'm a poet, published poet, and I love children. Yeah, that is who I am outside the podcast. I'm a queer guardian, I would say, with 4 beautiful kids. I call them beautiful, while the first one is a boy. He's just adorable. And I have 3 beautiful girls. And hopefully, one day I will have one that is biologically mine. Keep praying, right? So, what does queerness mean to me as a person? For me, queerness is freedom. I live in a country where my very existence is questioned. My very existence is criminalized. Being queer in Uganda is not the easiest thing, but I still come through it each and every day and accept who I am because this is me. So every time I think of my queerness or queerness in general, for me it's about living authentically, even when I'm in a world that says otherwise. And in a country like Uganda, queerness is also things like resistance, because existing and thriving in hostile spaces is basically an act of courage. So, a brief background about my queer journey. My pronouns are they, them. I identify as a non-binary. In some communities, they think of me as just a human being because that is how I introduce myself. Well, my journey hasn't been big or a dramatic reveal of my sexuality. It has been more like gradually turning up the volume on a song I always knew. I love music as a person. I love listening to compa. I love dancing. But when it comes to my queer journey, I have been turning up that music in bits and bits depending on how I feel whether or not it's safe. So all I'm saying is I basically spent most of my years trying to fit into a mold that wasn't mine. I lived in the closet for the longest time, I would say. I may not be the only one who has lived in the closet for so long. And it felt static because I always had to present myself different from how I felt. I had to present myself to the convenience of my parents who are Christian, to my friends who thought I was straight, to the world or community or country in which I live, whose laws do not allow me to be me. I finally decided to accept my identity when I was about 18, I would say. But of course, right from my 13, 14, I had questions about it that I always asked myself, why I was always different, why I felt more attracted to girls. And so it was so many things of back and forth. But when I accepted my identity, I said I'm not keeping quiet. And to date, I have been speaking up for me. I have made choices, difficult choices on who to inform of my identity or who not to inform of my identity, because my very speaking up about my sexuality is not just resistance, but is compromising my own safety in a country like Uganda. So, I love women. For some of you, you'd call that person a lesbian. I'm a masculine presenting lesbian. But I continuously go a lot of back and forth because I'm still learning the lyrics or the words to the song of how to live as a queer person in Uganda. But one thing you need to be sure of is that I am doing the dancing definitely. Some of you may be wondering what makes me the person to lead this conversation. Well, this conversation is not just about me. This conversation is about every queer person that lives in Africa, in our different diversities. So I am certainly not an expert in everything, but I am an Olympic level curious person and a professional empath. I am one person that puts myself in everyone's shoes, whether or not we have just met, whether or not I know you, whether or not you have let me down one or more times. So what qualifies me is just the deep passion for creating spaces where myself can be messy, honest, and truly seen, but also others like me can be themselves, honest, and truly seen. Then my background in community organizing also makes me a good fit for leading this conversation, because it has trained me to listen to different people's stories without saying them for them, but also it has taught me the importance of hearing people, but most importantly, it has taught me to ask the right kind of questions as and when I need to. So, what are some of the experiences that shaped my storytelling is when I was growing up in a country like Uganda, as a queer person, you're taught to be resilient right from childhood. And I have seen how silence has isolated me as a person, that most of the people I went to school with, most of the people I grew up with, we're not friends because of my sexuality. It is as basic as that. And I have also witnessed the power of storytelling to break shame, because I have been to a number of engagements where I find someone maybe I grew up with and I'm speaking up for what I believe in. And this has helped me build solidarity, not just between me and people I grew up with, but then they get to see me for who I am. And it then stops being my responsibility to help them appreciate or accept me. But when I speak out my authentic self, then I have done my part of the job. And so I'm a strong believer that storytelling breaks shame, but also builds solidarity. And not forgetting that the living two different persons duality, for lack of a better word, shaped the activist I am today. Yeah. What are some of the topics or stories that excite me the most on this platform? Well, I'm excited by everything that is said in its honesty. And most of all, I'm excited about exploring themes on survival, themes on joy, family, queer parenting, and guardianship, which is our theme for the first episodes, creativity, because most of the time when they talk about queer life, it's just about us struggling, us violations, us as pain. And so because we are more than just that we are defined or trying to be conformed to by the world, for me, I'm trying to build or look at themes that help people understand how different queer individuals build chosen families, like the one I'm having myself, dreaming futures, and then finding laughter even in the hard times. Believe me, it is not easy to be queer and in Africa. So if we make joy and share laughter and celebrate our existence in our spaces, try to create spaces that are safe and accepting for us, try to choose families after we have been rejected by our own, that brings me joy, and those are topics I'm excited to explore. But for now, just to give you a heads up or to remind you, is our current theme is around queer parenting and guardianship in Africa's context. And this episode is just to get to know me, but I hope you'll be listening. Look out for our next episode on queer parenting and guardianship with a friend from Malawi and a queer parent, and myself as a second guest as a queer guardian. So something about what is one misconception about queer life in Africa that I would wish people to understand. One, it is not true, and this goes to listeners that are homophobic and believe or presume or have been told that queerness is un-African. The truth is, we as queer people have always existed on this continent. We have always existed in our different countries. Long before there were colonial laws, long before there were imported prejudices, all these things before they came, we existed. And believe me, there are a number of conversations about this. Basically, take an example. In each of our local languages in Africa, there was a name that was used to define us. So why would they define something that did not exist? Okay, some of our ancestors were queer themselves, so our identities are rooted here, and our existence is deeply African. I am a Ugandan, proud Ugandan, born and raised here, and I have not been recruited, for lack of a better word, like they always use it, or initiated by anything Western. I was born here, raised here, and no one taught me how to be queer. I was born queer. I am still queer. I have prayed about not being queer in my journey of denial, and look where I am. I am still that queer individual. So this misconception of queerness is un-African. I would really love people to understand that we were born in Africa, we are Africans, and we were born queer, and queerness is African. We are true definition of that. So the next question is about what brings me joy and fuels my creativity outside of activism. Well, like I said earlier, I love poetry, I love music, and I love community. I love writing and listening to African artists who blend resistance with rhythm, joy, and for me, most of the things I do, I won't say I'm an extrovert, but I love people. I love being a part of people. I love being with people. Like, I just love people in general. And so it is hard for me to find a lot of fun in just dancing to tunes alone. I will participate in a number of community gatherings. I will celebrate Pride. I will celebrate Trans Day of Remembrance. And you'll find me doing this in small gatherings with friends, with like-minded people, with a family I chose for myself. And we'll just laugh, dance, celebrate who we are, and just breathe freely without limitations, without worrying of how we are presenting or how we are dressed or who we are or our sexuality. And for me, this is a big deal. Growing up, because while I was still in the closet, I found myself most of the time expressing my true self in writing. And because I was doing this a lot, this helped me be less hard on myself, because at some point I went through self-isolation, like I was rejecting who I really was. And so for me, what brings me joy and what drives the creativity would be poetry. That is the big thing majorly. But as a love of music, that does it for me as well. So if my younger self could listen to this podcast, what would I want them to know? One, I struggled with self-isolation, and I went through a battle of who I am, my sexuality, whether I was sick or having a problem, and then the different confrontations, the rejection from the community in which I existed, the family chaos. And so this took a very big toll on my younger self. And so if they were to listen to this, I would tell them this, because I felt alone for so long. I would want them to know that they are not alone. So Wilworth, the younger version, you are not alone. Even if the world feels hostile, even if the times are harsh, even if it feels like so many steps are being taken backward now, I need you to know that there is a community waiting for you out here, and your sexuality, your queerness is not something you need to fix, but it is something you need to embrace. That is who you are. You are perfect. You are worthy. You are wonderful in all your broken pieces and shapes, and you are just enough. I would really want my younger self to hear that and know that and take it away, because it is something that I didn't get a chance to hear anyone say it to me. And amidst those struggles, and I would want my younger self to know that we got somewhere. We made so many strides in the right direction. We are not yet there, but at least we live in a world that does not fully accept us, but we have and belong to a community that does not see us as something to fix. So the final question, we're coming to the close. What can listeners expect from me and this space in the future? Well, there will be no paper or pre-rehearsal in the conversations we hold on this podcast. And so one of the things I expect my listeners should be honest conversations, bold storytelling, and the most important, which was the basis as to why I started the podcast in the first place, is the refusal to be silenced by systems, by policies, by people, by anything. This is our act of resistance. So there will not be a time when we are silenced. This podcast is going to continue to amplify queer African voices and connect us as queer Africans with global movements for justice and dignity. And so what you should expect is everything queer, everything bold, everything authentic, and there won't be a curtain or a bloodshed of how we express. But of course, considering the countries in which each of our participants lives in, or some of the guests we shall be hosting on the podcast, their safety is key and important. So for safety reasons, we will do our best to guarantee safety. Even for myself as your host, safety is paramount for me, because my very articulation of things like this would be or is considered promotion according to the Anti-Homosexuality Act of Uganda. But here I am. So I want to say thank you so much for spending this time getting to know me or the person behind the voice. I truly believe that the best conversations happen when we show up authentically. And I will continue to promise, and I promise now, to bring that same honesty to every episode of Out Closeted Africa, where queer Africans speak out. Now that you know a little more about me, I hope you feel ready to share and a little bit about your own journeys with myself and our different listeners. I also hope that this space becomes more than just a show. It becomes a community where we see ourselves, where we hear ourselves, where we remind each other that queer African stories matter, but most importantly, where we heal from the broken pieces of ourselves or parts of ourselves. But just so you know, I am honored to hold this mic and this platform. But remember, this platform belongs to all of us. Together, we'll keep pushing back against silence and creating safe spaces where our voices can thrive. Please stay tuned to Out Closeted Africa, where queer Africans speak out. Stay engaged with us, and most importantly, stay proud. Until our next time, this is Will Worth, your host, signing off with love and solidarity. Peace.